What's up you guys, welcome back to another Commander deck tech video. This time I'm going to be using one from Commander 2020 last year for Ikoria, Tayam Luminous Enigma. Now this is a pretty cool one. I would say it's probably the strongest commander that came in that specific precon, because while you are fooling around with keyword counters with Tayam, it's only one of them. You're only using vigilance counters, and that doesn't even really matter to the deck. It's just another way that you can put counters on your creatures. So if you remove those vigilance counters, use Tayam's ability, you'll be able to bring back permanent cards CMC 3 or lower. So I decided to build a deck pretty much around that idea. All permanent cards, CMC 3 or less, with the exception of one card in here, and that is Primal Surge. Primal Surge is a win more card for this deck. You're going to find that there are a lot of combos that just kind of win you the game on the spot, but Primal Surge is a contingency plan. If we're not able to find every single piece that we need, we can just Primal Surge for the win. And we have so many combo pieces in here, if we do Primal Surge, we'll definitely win. So if we're just going over lands, I don't really have anything utility-wise that's relevant to the deck. It's pretty much just your basic mana fixing. I'm playing in total around 36 lands. So starting it off here, we have what is probably considered the core of the deck. These are our combo creatures. They make it easy to sacrifice them and bring them back. With Tayam's ability, we can remove counters that they get from their persist ability or their undying ability, as we have both persist and undying. The only difference between the two keywords is that persist puts -1/-1 counters on the creature when it returns. Undying puts +1/+1 counters. Probably the best one, I would say, is Geralf's Messenger. That's the one with undying. Every time you bring it back, if you're able to bring it back an infinite number of times, you just have each opponent lose their life. And it's pretty much the opposite with Kitchen Finks. If you do combo with Kitchen Finks, you can gain infinite life. Persist is sometimes the better one to combo with, because we do have other creatures in here that make it easy to put +1/+1 counters on your creatures when they enter. And the cool thing about +1/+1 counters and -1/-1 counters is that they cancel out. So a creature can't have both +1/+1 counters and -1/-1 counters at the same time. And here we have even more creatures that are relevant for our counter strategy. I was just mentioning the ability. What you get off of Anafenza and Good Fortune Unicorn is a way to negate those -1/-1 counters. So if you can keep bringing them back, they'll enter with a +1/+1 counter because of Good Fortune Unicorn. And with Anafenza, you can pretty much do that until the only creature with the lowest toughness is the one coming back with Persist. Winding Constrictor is kind of a dangerous card because of those persist creatures. Most of them have low toughness, so if they get another counter on them, they'll probably just die and you won't be able to combo. But that shouldn't keep you from playing it. It's still a pretty good card. Anytime you can double those vigilance counters too, that's pretty funny. And the bottom three creatures, we have Weaponcraft Enthusiast, which is a fun card. You can combo with it pretty easily in a lot of other decks too. Get either those servos or 2 +1/+1 counters. And I have a card that not a lot of people play, but I think it's great for this deck, Embodiment of Agonies, because it gets a +1/+1 counter for each different mana cost in your graveyard. And first time glancing over it, I just kind of dismissed it, but that's different mana costs. So something that's maybe 2 mana might have a very unique mana cost, like hybrid mana, like we saw with the persist creatures. And of course, Mana Gorger Hydra is great because you keep playing spells, your opponents keep playing spells, it's going to get massive. And here we have value in creature tokens. These are great permanents because it involves killing off creatures, or in Promise of Bunri's case, it involves sacrificing the enchantment. But Hallowed Spirit Keeper is probably the best one of them, because you're pretty much guaranteed with this deck. I play a crazy number of creatures in here. You will no doubt get a ton of spirits each time you sacrifice it. So you keep bringing back Hallowed Spirit Keeper with Tayam's ability, and you find a way to sacrifice it to something like Phyrexian Altar, you'll probably just win the game on the spot. Pawn of Ulamog, don't have to really say too much about that. It's a great card for combos, just a great card if you have any sort of sacrificing in black. And Abzan Ascendancy just puts +1/+1 counters on all of your creatures, gives you more counters to remove for Tayam, and you get a spirit whenever one of your non-tokens die. And here we have our sack outlets. Of course, not the only way that we can sacrifice in this deck, but these are in here for that specific purpose. Sacrificing's always good because it helps to speed up a graveyard-focused deck. And then we have our 3 sack outlets on the top there. Altar of Dementia could be used as a way to fill our graveyard, but it's also a win con. And we have the 2 mana sack outlets in Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar. Both brilliant, both pretty much must-haves for this deck. And then we have our 4 creatures that are sack outlets. Carrion Feeder being probably the best because each time you sack a creature, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So that's just more fuel for our commander. The other 3 aren't bad. I think Yahenni does synergize. You're able to get more +1/+1 counters. And by the way, the deck list will be linked in the description below, so if you were wondering, that's where it is. These are our payoff creatures. We have Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat, and Cruel Celebrant to all kind of do a similar thing. This is the payoff. This is really what we're in it for. Makes it pretty much a guarantee that you can win if you get a persist creature and a way to get a counter on it, or some way of comboing with our commander. Bastion of Remembrance is pretty much the same thing, but on an enchantment. And we have Corpse Knight to benefit off of a lot of ETBs. We're going to have persist creatures and undying creatures coming back over and over and over again. It's just another great, cheap combo piece. This is how we're going to win with the deck. Primal Surge is really just a fun win more card. Alright, so now that we've gone over pretty much the core of the deck, all the different pieces, now I'm going to go more into utility, things like card draw, removal, mana production, all that stuff. This is how we're going to draw cards in the deck. We don't need a ton of card draw in here because once you fill up your graveyard, it's really not hard to maintain a board presence. And the only purpose for a lot of decks in drawing a ton of cards is because they need to recover or they're incapable of maintaining a board presence and they need some way of getting through their deck, getting to their answers or to their combo pieces. Pretty much at will, you should be able to get back what you want from your graveyard if you're playing the deck the right way. Skull Clamp is an oldie but a goldie, belongs in pretty much every deck that can benefit off of sacrificing. Esper Sentinel is a new card, but it's so good with this commander in this deck because you're able to put more +1/+1 counters on it, so it just keeps getting bigger. Your opponents are probably not going to pay that tax. Dark Confidant is a great card if you have a limit to your CMC, so if you have a lower mana curve, Dark Confidant pretty much makes it so that the worst that happens is that in this deck you get Primal Surge, which is probably not going to happen as often, and you end up losing 10 life. That would suck, but that's most likely not going to happen. But we have a lot of 1-drops, a lot of 2-drops. That's life worth losing in order to get more card draw. And if you don't feel safe with Primal Surge, you don't want to risk it, you don't have to play Primal Surge. It's just I decided I wanted this to be an all-permanence deck. And then we have Grim Haruspex because this is a Primal Surge deck. It is possible for you to get to the end and have no way of getting around playing any of those other cards that draw you cards whenever a creature dies. So I only have Grim Haruspex in here. That way, if I get through the whole deck, I will have a way to combo without just decking myself out and losing. And here we have what I would consider graveyard setups, just any kind of graveyard support cards. That's what this section's about here. Satyr Wayfinder is a brilliant card. It's a very quick way of dumping creatures into your graveyard. Honestly, in my opinion, one of the best setup cards in the game. Then we have Fiend Artisan. Could be considered a sack outlet, but it's not a free sack outlet. You do have to pay mana and tap it, so it's just a way you can benefit off of your graveyard. It does get +1/+1 for each creature in your graveyard. That's not that relevant, but this and Survival of the Fittest serve a similar purpose. You're ditching one creature to get something you want from your deck. And then Death's Oasis is a pretty crazy card. If you keep killing off your own creatures, you're just going to keep milling. You're going to get to the cards that you really want in your graveyard. And at first I was concerned by that because we have a lot of good combos. I didn't want to mill myself out. So you do have a cool ability where you can pay a mana and sacrifice it to gain some life. It's not going to be a ton of life, but it is a way for it to take care of itself so you don't mill yourself out. And then we have our removal section. Again, this is all permanents, CMC 3 or lower. No instants, no sorceries. I want to actually get back almost everything in this deck with Tayam. That includes these. And in creature form, we have Plaguecrafter, one of the best creatures, the Fleshbag Marauder creatures. You can bring them back from the graveyard. Each player sacks a creature or planeswalker. If they can't, they discard a card. Been a staple ever since it came out. We have Reclamation Sage and Knight of Autumn to pretty much do the same thing. Knight of Autumn has an upside though. Instead of just destroying a target artifact or an enchantment, you could put 2 +1/+1 counters on her. So those are counters you could use for Tayam, of course. And then we have Aura Shards and Pernicious Deed, two fantastic enchantments. If you are going to play Tayam, all permanents or not, I think these are still staples. Just because we have loops where we can bring back creatures even if we're not winning on the spot and really abuse Aura Shards. Pernicious Deed has always been pretty crazy. And then we have our mana producers. We have a decent amount of ramp in here. We don't need to ramp up that high for anything outside of Primal Surge, but I still think it's great. We have a lot of ways of getting ourselves some mana, all in permanent form. So we have Soul Ring and Arcane Signet, the only mana rocks. We have Birds of Paradise, Avacyn's Pilgrim, and Elves of Deep Shadow, our 1-mana mana dorks that I think are pretty good. They provide us with a variety of mana. We have Sakura Tribe Elder and Wood Elves to get lands. Now we do have ways of producing mana that directly synergize with our strategy. And I think most people are probably aware of Devoted Druid. It's very easy to abuse Devoted Druid and get a ton of green mana in this deck. You just remove those counters or you add +1/+1 counters to her. We have Wall of Roots, so you get to remove those -1 toughness counters, which are really weird. But if you remove them, you get more green mana. Skull Prophet is fantastic. It has nothing to do with counters, but instead of just tapping for black or green, you could have it mill you 2 cards. We have Fertilid, of course. If you can keep adding +1/+1 counters, you'll be able to continuously pay 2 mana to get a land. And Rish Karpima Renegade makes use out of all of our +1/+1 counter enablers, allowing them to tap for green mana is pretty cool. And here we have what I would consider to be the Miscellaneous category. We have a variety of different abilities here, different benefits. We have Heartstone, so we can make our activations for Tayam 1 less. That'll often help out our combos, make that ability cheaper. We have Spore Frog as kind of a protection card, can prevent combat damage. One of the more annoying things to do is just constantly bring back a Spore Frog. But we have it in here. We could play the other one. I think it's a white Kami. Didn't want to do that. That would be overkill. We have Selfless Spirit because it's a great way to protect the board from a board wipe. Get to keep all our creatures out there. We have some Graveyard Reanimation and Animate Dead. It's a great permanent card. We have Vesper Lark, which is one that I don't think a lot of people play, but it's a great underrated way of bringing back cheaper creatures. And since this deck is CMC 3 or lower, we have a lot of those creatures. We have Recruiter of the Guard, same thing. That condition is pretty easy to meet for a lot of cards in this deck. So it's basically a permanent ETB way of getting whatever we want from our deck, most of the time. We have the newer card, Guardian of Faith from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. This is an awesome creature. I love this card so much because it kind of gets around the downside of the deck that we don't have instant speed responses most of the time. Outside of our commander's ability, I mean. So if you can flash this into play, phase out all your creatures, save them for a turn, I think that's pretty cool. And we of course have Eternal Witness because who doesn't love getting back pretty much whatever you want from your graveyard, including Primal Surge if we happen to mill it by accident. So anyway guys, let me know what you think about the deck in the comments section below. Again, I will have the link to the deck list in the description below as well. Subscribe, like, comment, share if you have not already. Become a channel member too if you want to help me out. It's greatly appreciated. Void here signing off. I will see you all next time.